Hello, hello.
Welcome to Release Unplugged. How's everyone doing?
I'm doing good. I don't see how chat room's doing though. Chat room, how are you this morning? Is early morning for me. Is really early morning. It's not early morning for you two though.
No. It's late morning in the afternoon, I'd say. I don't know about Marin.
It's a late morning. It's like 3 p.m. So if you wake up like around 10ish, maybe it's still
Yeah.
late morning.
Yeah, that's true.
There we
Well-
go. We got people in chat now. Hey, Chris.
Welcome, everyone.
Thanks for joining us this morning, afternoon, wherever you are.
Should we do the game of like, where's everyone at and what time it is right now? Chat,
Sure.
let us know.
Chat.
Let's see who's in
Chat.
chat.
Where are you from? What's your time this morning, afternoon, evening?
Are you eating something? Are you drinking something? Are you ready for a release? Do you have any questions? Is that too many questions to ask?
So we've got Eva here this morning. Eva, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, thanks. If someone doesn't know me still, I haven't been on stream that much, but I'm the person behind Telerik and Kendo UI social channels, and I'll be popping in today, giving out some prizes. I'll be the good cop in the release stream. I don't know if there's going to be a bad cop, but anyways, very, very lovely to see you all. Very lovely to see you, Ed and Marin. And thanks for joining, everyone.
Marin's joining us from our support team. So we're lucky to have Marin with us today. How's it going, Marin?
Hey folks, I'm doing well. I've already been doing some tickets today, and right after the stream, I'm jumping back in to get to all of you guys.
Yeah, so if you're submitting support tickets, Marin's one of the key people behind the scenes answering those tickets and helping you all out.
It's not just me. We got a whole team of professionals. So it's me. There are a couple of other guys doing that, and there's of course the developer team. I mean, the people who write the code and those components. And without them, I mean, what do I support?
Exactly. Those engineers do a fantastic job making these components, by the way. We had a heck of a release. We had several new components for Telerik UI for Blazor in this release. Lots and lots of updates. We're at 65 components now. Hundreds of features on the grid itself. So we are... Let's get this up here. We've got a ton of new stuff here for everybody to check out. Sorry, we've got our schedule for today first. Eva, you want to talk about who's coming up this afternoon?
Sorry, I just popped it on there while you were speaking, but just wanted everyone to see that we have a plan for today, and we will be tackling everything. Marin and Ed are kicking it off with Blazor, and then we have TJ with React. Sambasu is joining us with Xamarin and Desktop, and then I think him and Andy are doing testing as well, and then Alyssa is taking on Angular with Carl, and then Sam again with Reporting, right? Am I missing someone?
I think you got it. I think that's everybody. We've got quite a few products to cover. That's why we've got such an expansive schedule for today.
Yes.
Our DevCraft package and our Telerik brand has just so much amazing stuff in it.
Yeah.
Looks like you're getting a fan club in the chat room there, Marin.
Hello. Awesome. Well, there's a fun new thing to start.
I don't know if I can.
Marin's fan club.
Out the chat.
You did it right. I think you did it right.
But
yeah, everyone.
I don't know.
We do have prizes. We'll give away 6 Amazon gift cards at the end of each of the sessions. And don't forget you can enter the draw, and I'll drop a link in the chat as well. I think you should be able to see it. Enter the draw, and I'll be here for just another second just to tell you to follow us on your social media of choice. We're at Telerik and at Kendo UI. Sorry, I'm just plugging my channels, and I'm going to hop off and let you code. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in.
Thanks so much, Eva. We'll see you in a little bit.
Bye.
Bye. All right. So I was telling you, Marin, we've got quite a few new components We've got
Oh yeah.
a lot of new features. Why don't we start with the grid and work our way down? We've got, if you go to demos.telerik.com, you'll see these updated and new badges that go beside each of the individual components here. So the grid, we always have an update coming for the grid. It seems like every release, there's at least one, if not more, updates for the grid.
Usually more like 3 or 4.
Yeah. Especially for the Telerik Grid, because we're catching up with parity on some of our other products you might be familiar with, like Kendo UI, Kendo UI for Angular or Kendo React. Those have had a little bit more of a head start, so we're kind of catching up on some of those. So you'll always see lots of updates with the data grid. This is one of my favorites. I've used this one actually in the Kendo UI product quite a bit. It's our filtered checkbox list. This one, it's kind of like the Excel filtering that you see in Microsoft Excel. So the grid will scan your data source for that column. And what you get is this nice checkbox list. So you can come in and check items, and only those items are queried and put into the data grid. So it's a really nice user interface for people. I think customers will, and your customers, I mean, when you're developing apps, your users will enjoy having a UX like that, where it's just dead simple. Especially if you look at something like this Boolean true-false column here. It boils it down to just the true and false. So you don't have to write any kind of filter code in that box. It's just point and click, and you're good to go. So we'll
anything with repetitive values. Anything that has repetitive values in your column is awesome for that, because the grid's going to get just the distinct values. And if you have like 10,000 records with 10 different values, you'll get just 10 checkboxes. So it's very easy to filter.
Yeah, so it's getting the distinct values for you, so you don't have to worry about it, which is nice. You don't have to write like that custom filter logic to get it in there. It's all done for you. We've got load groups on demand. So this is another nice way of kind of getting your data grid up and running quickly. If you have a lot of records to load, maybe you group those things together and then load the items on demand when they're opened up. So these data grids can get pretty intense with the amount of data that you're shoving in them. So that's another nice have. It's this on-demand type of a feature. And
another cool thing about this, I'm sorry, I probably have to jump in every now and then and talk over you, but I just have to tell everyone the awesome things. This one is supported with row virtualization. So if you already have that like endless scrolling type of paging, that's going to work with that grouping load on demand too, which can be awesome for you, especially if you've got a lot of groups to display in the beginning.
Nice. Yeah, and feel free to jump in. I think there's a slight delay between us, so it's okay if you cut me off a little bit. I don't mind at all. So there's virtualization, and I know it's probably not quite possible to see on the stream here, but when I click on any of these larger items, it's so fast. I mean, even not on the stream, it's a little bit hard to see, but there's a loader animation that plays very, very briefly in this spot over here. So if you had a long service call, for example, to fetch this data, you would actually see a nice loading icon pop up in here. And that loading animation is actually the next component down here as well. So the grid has a loading animation, which I wasn't scrolled down far enough to see. Let's see if we can trigger that off again. If I go back, there we go. So the grid has a loading animation. We also have the loader available for use with just your application. You can use it inside of your components and templates, and then it's built into many of the Telerik UI components as well. And it also shows up in paging here inside of the frame of the grid, which is really nice. Will it work inside of a tile? It is in the loading animation. I believe the loading animation will work anywhere. We can take a look at the loading container as well.
And the grid's also going to work inside a tile.
The grid would work the grid would work inside of a tile. I was thinking it would be kind of too big, but you could have a tile that spans the entire width of the page and then smaller tiles around it. So we have the loading container, and this is how you customize adding a loader to your application. So you can wrap the entire page in a loading container. You wrap multiple components. It's totally customizable however you want to add that. You can see your page is loading. We have all sorts of ways to theme that loader, which is really nice. Position, color, all of that. It's just really easy to change, as is most of the components in the Telerik UI package. It's just so easy to customize this stuff. It's not built in. Chris says it's not built in, but you can easily integrate our loader container by yourself.
Chris is, by the way, one of the developers on the team. So he's one of the people working on who wrote that code, actually. So, yeah.
I must have said something was built in that wasn't. Maybe the grid load on demand, or sorry, not load on demand, but the loading animation.
The loading animation is
this
built
demo
in.
showing? It wasn't.
So
okay, so the loader container, I misspoke. The demo is showing how to add the loading container around the grid to make that work.
So that loading container is just for the initial data load. The docs is going to explain a bit more on why that's done that way. And then when you actually have the data in the grid, the paging, filtering, sorting operation like that, or editing, it's going to show the built-in loader. So for paging, filtering, sorting, grouping, editing, deleting, inserting, you got the built-in loader for the grid.
Okay. I gotcha. So when we load it fresh, the grid hasn't quite initialized yet, probably. So it's the loading container takes
It's more like the grid simply doesn't know whether, when, or what data you're going to give to it. So it doesn't know what loading sign to show. Should it show a sign? Because it can break quite a few other scenarios if we do that, because it makes the grid unusable. So it's a bit risky.
Yeah, there's a lot of life cycles that are happening within a Blazor page. There's lots of components that are loading. Data's going back and forth asynchronously. It's really tricky to render things during that initial page load and make sure that the UX is nice and smooth. So that's why these loading containers are nice. So you can kind of wait for the page to actually assemble itself first, and then use the individual loading containers on certain elements that may need to fetch more data or reload or edit and stuff like you said. So we have the ability to add that. We'll be adding some of these to some live projects here in a few minutes as well. I just kind of wanted to give a brief overview of some of the new stuff that's in here. These range sliders during the webinar, if you came over from the webinar, I talked very highly of these in the webinar. So we had a lot of requests for these. Marin, I'm sure you know, we've had a lot of feedback on this.
Yep, we have.
So if you look at HTML, there is a slider built in HTML, and it's not, I don't want to say terrible, I don't want to put it down, but it's very basic. So it doesn't do a whole lot. This is the HTML slider that you get out of the box with the browser, right? So we could have easily skinned this with the Kendo UI theme and just shipped it, right? That's not what we do here. So what we have is something that's way better. We not only have a slider, but we have a range slider. So with HTML, you just get, I think, the basic slider. I don't believe there's a range slider built into HTML. If I'm wrong, feel free to correct me, but I don't believe there is. That's about all you get right there.
Yep, that's all you get.
So with our components, not only do we have a regular slider, but we have a range slider. There are hover states for the labels that are shown on top that show you the actual value that's being selected by the range. So this is definitely like a step up from that in that respect. But we also have labels down below, which are clickable. So there's lots of ways to navigate this slider. It's not just a simple like HTML slider with a skin on it, like this one. So we went above beyond with the user experience to make sure that it was something that was actually really special. So we also have these spinners that we can put on the ends. Oh, sorry, that jumped down to slider. I wanted to stay on the range slider for a minute. We have templates that are Blazor templates, really intuitive templates that you can set the labels and format them. For example, this one has some currency applied to it. So the dollar symbol is shown on the range slider as well. And I didn't really point this out, but there's also large and small ticks between those values. So there's ability to set those and customize those as well. We have a horizontal and vertical orientation. It's just set a simple property, and the range slider adapts to horizontal and vertical layouts. And as with everything here, totally customizable. So you can set the tick positions, where they are above, below the slider, the step size, the small and large step size. Let's see here. Why can't I edit the large step size? What did I do wrong?
No, you didn't do it wrong. We just showcase. Well, there is a bit of a trick to setting the small and the large step. They need to be in sync so the math is correct. And that's why we just show you that you can set the large step, but we didn't leave it available for the demo because you can easily make a mess of it.
You need to do some validation around this if you wanted it to
Not,
be.
not necessarily validation, but you just have to take care of it on how you set these values. And just clicking randomly like people do on a demo will kind of break things. So we don't want people to do that. We just do some calculations for you there in this demo.
I see. They're changing as I move it up. What you don't want is the user setting this to be larger than the large step, and they would probably
for example, or them not matching.
It would throw some sort of exception, I'm sure. Validation. So these will validate against the forms in Blazor. There's globalization, localization, all of those type of things as well. And the slider's very similar to the range slider, except you're only choosing values in one direction here. So again, I know it was something that customers were asking a lot for, and it took a little bit of time to get that released, but it was well worth the wait. There's a lot more delivered than just a basic HTML slider. Our scheduler is another one that often receives updates in every release. It's a very, very complex component. This time around, keyboard navigation. So we take accessibility very seriously, and keyboard navigation was added to like multiple components here, not only in Telerik UI for Blazor, but all of the Kendo UI and MVC stuff all got some additional updates with keyboard navigation for components and other accessibility tweaks. So it's always nice to know that we have accessibility in mind for you, so you don't have to necessarily worry about that stuff when you're building your app. The splitter component, we're going to play with this one in a little bit here, Marin. I'm going to go through the demo that we showed in the webinar. We have extra time today, so we don't have to rush through it. And maybe you can suggest some tweaks or some features that we can add to our application that we build. Splitter component is nice for breaking the screen up for the user. You can snap these as well, so there's little icons here to snap the panels across. We actually have some folks that are customers of ours that are building like an IDE interface. So kind of like a Visual Studio Code. I don't want to give too many details, but there's something like that that people that buy our components use these type of things for. It's really cool to see people get our components and build things with them. we're always surprised at what you all build with the stuff that we make. These have vertical, horizontal settings as well, and you can nest them, as you can see in the overview here. And I'll show you how to do that in just a second here. We're getting close to the end of the new features and things, and we'll do some live coding here. Customer feedback is really important. Marin, you field a lot of this customer feedback, and there's a couple different channels that this comes through. Why don't you tell us about a couple ways that people actually provide feedback on the product?
Also, mainly we get that through tickets. I mean, when people are trying to get something done and they look at our components, in the most cases, I think we mostly got what you need. And in the cases where we don't yet, you just enter a ticket and say, hey guys, I'm trying to do this. I can't. How do I? That's the most common way we get feedback. And out of that, we get one of two options. We either can open a feature request for you on our feedback portal, where you can track its status, get email notifications when something happens, like more comments, more votes, or we know which release it gets in, which is probably what you're looking for usually. And the other option is that maybe it's something that you can already do with the current API and features we get, and then in that case, we will show you how. So these are the two primary ways. Of course, you can open a public request on the portal yourself. There is a button right there at the top of the portal on the right. So just go from there. And the third way is that our product managers are doing their job quietly behind the scenes. You don't see them doing that. You don't hear them doing that. You don't see them in the forums and things like that, but they're there and they're talking to some people. They're looking at industry trends. They're looking at a lot of things. And they're also taking the input that we get from the support channels, and all of that results in a roadmap page. And then,
also,
of course, that goes
I brought up feedback.telerik.com here for the feedback portal. This is a good place to put things that you're looking for, feedback that you have in, and you can have that upvoted. These things help drive our roadmap as well. And Marin, you answer a lot of these feedback portal posts as well.
If you guys need something that you see in the feedback portal and you need it like now, obviously, just go and click that vote button and probably the follow button at the top of the item too. So when we see the votes go up, when we see the comments go up on a certain item, we know that it's getting traction, we know it's getting popular, and that bumps it up in our roadmap, it bumps it up in our plans. So the more popular a thing is, the more likely it's to get implemented sooner. This is one of the primary purposes of this portal, so we can gauge what you guys need. And then the second purpose is so we can follow things. So for example, when we know that it's coming in a certain release, you'll get an email about it if you follow the item.
Yeah, and there's even a notification up here that shows the release and it's completed. So you can see that we're taking these and giving them attention and following up with folks and letting them know that these features they asked for have been added to the product. So we've got things like export to Excel and the animations and things for the grid in there already. And it's a great place to leave your feedback for us. And there's sometimes in these where you leave like little snippets of code and stuff like that, because the feature might not be there, but you can accomplish the same idea with what we already have, which doesn't mean it won't be a feature. It just means that you can have access to whatever that thing is you wanted now, while we make it, bundle it up into an actual like component, for example, or add it as a property or that sort of thing. But there may be a workaround to get that going immediately. And there's often little code snippets in here, in the facts section, in the documentation. There's lots of examples all through all of these places to get knowledge. And I actually used some of that for the demo that we're going to do today. So I dug in, and we have an editor component, and people asked a lot about like, how do you get Markdown into that editor and out of that editor? And I went in and found your example and used that for the webinar. But in in a long roundabout way, I was getting to the tab strip header template because this was something that came through one of our feedback channels. So we had customers that wanted to customize the tabs at the top of the tab strip, and that feature ended up getting added in this release. So a lot of people wanted to show icons in here. So I think that's where the example came from as well.
Yep.
This was primarily what people were asking for. So instead of adding simply an icon placeholder, we added a whole template region so you can completely customize that tab.
While you're clicking on the next item, I want to talk about for a moment about the link I just dropped in the chat, another one of my favorite resources for people. It's a repository that has, like, I think there are like 54 or 55 sample projects right now in there that showcase certain common scenarios that people ask about every now and then. And, you know, just browsing through there can let you copy that and get it up and running in no time.
Ah, there we go. So, oh, that's not it, is it? Where's the repo you're talking about? I'm trying to find it in chat here.
Just put it in the chat.
Ah, there we go.
Isn't it there?
That one? GitHub.telerik or GitHub/Telerik/Blazor UI. Let's take a look at that. This is probably where I took the code from that I was talking about. So this is the repo that Marin dropped into chat. So we've got these are the individual demos in here, these folders. Is that correct?
Well, they're actually the components, and every now and then there are more than one example in each folder. So for example, if you open the grid folder, there's like a dozen in there.
Ah, nice. So binding to Expando objects. We've got OData in here, export PDF. So there's a lot of really good stuff in here.
Yeah, I want to highlight.
Sorry, go
it's
ahead.
it's called data source request on server. Just one higher. Yeah, this one, and this is my favorite one because it lets you customize or actually implement server data operations for your grid. And it's like maybe one class, a controller action, and a grid with one method. So it's like, for you, it's probably 10 lines of code to copy paste into, and it lets you enhance the performance of the grid and your data source operations immensely. And we got examples for WebAssembly, we got examples for the server side. There is actually one contribution from a customer of ours about doing that with gRPC. It provides great flexibility, so take a peek at it if you have a lot of data.
Yeah, this is one that, again, I used this one in production when I was doing Kendo UI. We have a similar functionality. It's actually, you could say it's the same code base, but it's been tweaked slightly for Blazor. But we have this functionality in Kendo UI, and I used this in production when I was writing apps full time. Because what it does is the component tells the server what page it's on, how many items per page, what filters are applied, all the metadata that you see in the data grid gets passed up to the server. Then the server can take that and give it to Entity Framework, which is really just like one statement to do that. It sounds like a lot, but when you actually see the code, it's very, very little code. And then Entity Framework can take that metadata and process it into a SQL query and give you back only the items that you're serving up to the view in the grid. So it heavily cuts down on the data that you're trafficking back and forth between the grid and the back end of the application. So that is an excellent one. I think the editor, if we go into editor, yeah, this is the markdown example that I borrowed from. So you'll see that one here shortly too. I pinned this. We'll keep it open. We might need that for some things when we get into some coding here. We'll jump through this a little bit quicker so we can get some code up on the screen. We've got the filter also in our tree list component, more keyboard navigation, checkboxes for our list component, tree list component. Again, sorry?
It's the tree view. The tree list is the previous one.
Yeah. treeless. I always get those two mixed up.
So do I.
So I think this was another customer request. It may have already been on the roadmap, but I think customers wanted it pretty badly. So we were able to bump
Well,
that
it
one
was
up.
on the roadmap, but we dropped it because we couldn't get to it because of other things that we thought were higher priority, and then people wanted it, and then we put it back on the roadmap because we listen.
Keyboard navigation here for the upload and so on. So there's some new stuff coming as well. So we can kind of tell you a little bit about what's on the roadmap. The windows I heard are getting updated in the next release. So dragging, dropping, those sort of things. Multiple windows, that type of stuff is coming. So that should be nice. So let's write some code, Marin. I think
Let's
we
do
gave
that.
everybody a good overview of what's here. On the webinar, I have a stage demo. It's a little bit staged, but there was some code that I didn't get to show, and I did something in 10 minutes that probably should have gotten a lot more time. So let's go over this in slow motion. Putting this in 10 minutes may have been a little bit of a disservice to folks, but I really wanted to show off the splitter because that was one of the highlights in this release. And to code out a splitter component by hand, it's not complex code, but it takes more than 10 minutes to like type this all out. So I put it in these little snippets and kind of staged this out so we could build it live. So what I've done is I've dropped a splitter, Telerik splitter on the page. It's got a width and height of 100%. Orientation is vertical, and then I'm going to drop some horizontal panes here in a minute. Let's save this off first, and let's run it just so we can see what we're working with so far. So it is a big fat blank page with an error. So what did I do to error this out? Do I need more than the one pane? Let's take a quick look and see. I did reset some code in here, so we'll see here in a second. Telerik Blazor and knit splitter.
Yeah,
Fine.
I can tell you what happened. The package reference for the Telerik package just got updated in your project, and you haven't run your browser since. So since it's a static asset, the file name is always the same, and these local servers, they don't do a great job of tracking the last modified date. So essentially you get in the browser, you get the old version of the files that we have in the browser, the assets, and that can error out. So the way to fix that is just to clear your browser cache, and it will be up and running again.
Yeah, I saw this right before the stream started, and this is always a scary thing when you're streaming, is to see an update come through. So it looks like we pushed a brand new version. Let's see. I thought it was 221.1.
Yep,
that
we're
I
there.
saw.
I think your NuGet feed is a bit laggy.
Let's try. Oh, I was on the wrong page. It needed to be on updates.
Oh,
There we go. So we need to update this. Let's see if this works on the live stream. I always, like I said, I'm always scared to do this on a live stream. Updating
always.
things.
When you're showing something, it either
Yeah.
breaks or, I mean, if you're showing it to people, it breaks. And when you're showing it to colleague to help you fix it, it always works, so you can't help.
So we'll go back and we'll reload this. And then
And now you gotta
There
clear
we go.
that browser cache.
It looks like
It's a good thing to do.
So let's go ahead and do that just in case. Let's be safe here, and just so we don't get any subsequent errors. Go ahead and getting it again. Empty cache, hard reload. There we go. I think it worked that time. So I don't have any other panels in here, so it's kind of bland. It's just showing one like big empty box because there's nothing to split between a single panel. So we need some more panels. So the first thing I did is added a vertical panel. So we have that vertical separation. Now I'm going to add in that vertical panel more panels. So I've got splitter panes. Inside of splitter panes, I have a pane that has another set of Telerik splitters in it. So what I've done is I've divided this up with the vertical, and so I have one vertical panel, and inside it, sorry, I have 2 vertical panels. I have one, and then the other one has 3 horizontal panels inside of it. And I put some HTML in there to just hold some places for me. So let's load that up. And you can see now it's coming to life a little bit. So if I pop that up and pop this out, I've got 3 up top. These are vertical, and then I've got 2 that are horizontal. One is the HTML panel, the other is the 3 panels. So to make that a little less confusing, I've got one horizontal panel here and the second horizontal panel here, and then of course the 3 verticals are up here. So now we've got 3 panels up top, 1 below. I'm going to collapse the one below back down for a second. I'm going to put a Telerik editor in this panel. We're going to build a markdown editor in here. So we'll have the Telerik editor on this side and a markdown editor on this side, and then we'll put a file explorer on this side. So we can pull in files, edit them, or see them, not only edit them live, what they look like, what you see is what you get editor, but we can also just edit markdown code and it will update the view as well. So there's some properties on these I didn't go through in the webinar. We've got the ability to set whether you can collapse those panels or not. So you can set collapsible to true or false. You can initialize them as collapsed or not collapsed. You can set that true or false. I guess expanded would be the opposite of collapsed. You could set the size and also the min-max of these 2. So I think I set the min-max on the file browser so it doesn't get weird when you try to shrink it below what a file browser could show files. It starts wrapping very strangely. So I limited the size that you can expand and contract that panel. So this one's restricted. These, however, we can go as much as we want. So we have some settings.
Another
for those.
cool thing, gotta jump in here. Another cool thing is that you're not limited to using pixel units. You can use percentage. You can even use things like viewport width and viewport height units. And just like a pro tip, try to leave one pane that doesn't have a specific size set, so it can like accommodate the size adjustment from the other panes. So as you resize the next panes, there is going to be one that kind of takes the hit, if you will.
Nice.
So right now we got 2 of these, and they distribute the available space evenly. If you got 3 of them, they're going to divide it in 3, obviously. So that's why you always want to have one that doesn't have a predefined size, so you don't get some weird behavior. Like if you set 4 panes that are each 33% wide, you get like 120%, which is not what you probably want.
This is gonna either break outside of the view of, or the width of the browser or the container that it's in, or cause some other strange things to happen. No, that's a great tip. The values that you talked about, any CSS value should work in here, so they don't have to be pixels. You could put EMs and all the other things you mentioned. So anything goes in CSS works inside of those as well. Let's see, we need to go and do something with this. So I've pre-coded some of this stuff. We can add some new stuff as we go along too. This won't take the full hour here, so we'll have some time to add some new things, kind of improvised. We'll drop an HTML editor in here, and literally the HTML editor has almost no need to write any kind of code behind it. All we're going to do is bind the value to a property, and we're going to set the width and height. That doesn't mean there aren't other options here. There's things like the toolbar, for example, right, Marin? We've got tons of things that you can add in the toolbar.
There's also like methods you can call on the editor. So its base form is pretty simple. Just give it a value, but you can do a lot of other things with it too.
Absolutely. I think I was playing around with this after the show on Monday, and I added like a full toolbar because you get so many tools in here by default but there's actually like a full like set of tools that you can add to it. And I ended up actually using it for something afterwards. I was like, I need to write some Markdown real quick, and I just opened up this project and started using it.
Yep. So we got two sets of tools built in. The ones that default, which we decided are the most commonly used ones, so you don't have so much clutter on your toolbar. And then there is a collection that we predefine as the all tools that we have. So just a single line of code, you can put in literally every tool the editor has at your disposal.
We'll do that here in a second, Marin. You can help me with that. We'll
Sure.
add a full toolbar after we get this up and running. So we've got a little piece of HTML that just is the header of that panel. We've got the Telerik editor, and we're binding value to something I called HTML state. In the next panel, we've got a Markdown header and then a text area, Telerik text area, that's binding to something I called Markdown state. So these both have a property they're binding to. This is two-way data binding in Blazor. So these are both binding to two different properties, but I'm just taking in with a little bit of code, they're actually kind of sharing some data back and forth, and I'll show you how that works next. We got HTML state, Markdown state. If we scroll down, I have a backing field for HTML state called HTML. When it returns its value, it's just going to return the backing value. When I set the value, and when I mean I set the value, when the component binds its value to HTML state, it's going to take that value and it's going to convert it to Markdown. So I'm calling a method in my program called toMarkdown, which is just a wrapper around some code that I picked out of your project, Marin. So we're going to new up something called reverse Markdown. This is a third-party package that we pulled in from NuGet. So it's just a simple NuGet package, and then you new up an instance of this thing called reverse Markdown, call converter, and then convert that value. And then the same thing going the other way, we have one for HTML. This calls another package called Markdown Sharp. So this will take any HTML and turn it into Markdown, or no, Markdown and turn it into HTML, my bad. So we call Markdown, we transform that Markdown into HTML. So we've got one method that takes Markdown, turns it into HTML, another method that takes HTML, turns it into Markdown. So two little helper methods, one of them being used here to transform the data-bound HTML into Markdown, and then we just take the HTML value and bind it directly to the backing field. And on the reverse side, we'll do the same thing, but this time we're going to set the Markdown value to the backing field of the Markdown, and then the HTML gets converted from the Markdown. So this is going to two-way data bind both of those components together. And if I refresh this page, now in your example, Marin, that you wrote, you don't have to have these side by side. In the example you'll find in Marin's repo, there's a custom toolbar button that pops up a window that you can type Markdown in, and then when you close that window, it'll update the editor. So that's really a cool approach too. I like that. Let's see, we need some Markdown. Let's just type some over here, I guess. So we can say hello Twitch. And then we've got questions in the chat room too. Are there more Blazor videos like this? This is something that I do pretty frequently. So if you follow the Code It Live channel, there is a show that I do every Wednesday. And then I also do shows on Friday, normally about this time. But today I'm doing an early show because of the release webinar. Those are usually on my channel. By my channel, I mean you can check the lower third here below my name, and I stream on that channel. So what's nice about this dual editing option here is I can see the Markdown that's being generated as I type over here. And I can come in and just select this toolbar and make a second heading, and you can see it put the proper Markdown on that side. So this is really neat to be able to do something this powerful with literally two elements and 2 properties. That's really all this is. 2 elements, 2 properties, and I
The
have
power
added
of NuGet.
the power of NuGet, the power of pre-built
Blazor.
components, and the power of Blazor. So I've got my splitter here. I've got kind of that Visual Studio Code type of experience, and we can add some more. What do you call it? We can add some more tools to this as well. Why don't we go ahead and add those? So if I wanted to add more tools to the toolbar, do you remember this off the top of your head?
No, I just pasted the link in the chat because I never really remember things like that.
I never remember
always go to
either.
the docs.
It's fairly simple, but there's so many of these components. It's not like we can remember all of this stuff. So it is in the docs. Let's go to docs.telerik.com. And then I'll navigate it up here so people can see where to find this stuff. So if you go to docs.telerik.com, click on Telerik UI for Blazor, you'll find all of the components here in the left-hand side. And we're going to go over to the editor. And then there are built-in tools in this. So editor, built-in tools. And it's generally, it's telling you all of the built-in tools here. I think it's like 1 line of code though.
Yep. Now I'm seeing that I'll have to tweak those articles because that info we're looking for is in the toolbar article. So I'll probably have to link it from the built-in tools article.
So this tells you all about the editor toolbar and how to choose items. So this is actually the piece of code we want right here. We're just going to give you all the items. So again, it's just 1 property statement. We come in here and say tools, editor toolset, all, and then I don't think we need. Is this a string, or is it?
No, it's a collection. It's like a. No, it's not an
Oh, so Visual Studio.
It's a collection.
Is going to hang for a minute. I don't know what's wrong with my Visual Studio, so bear with me for just a second while it spins. I don't know if you can see the spinner on Twitch, but we'll take some questions while this thing shakes out. It always does. It's going to do like that gray screen of death type of thing, but it won't crash. I've been trying to get some assistance with Visual Studio, and I haven't gotten anywhere yet. Let's see here. I get this for the YouTube channel. This page isn't available. Sorry, I'm searching for something else. Here, I'll paste that in chat if I can get access to. There we go. Visual Studio came back. So give me just a second here. And that is here. That's with the handle. And there's the link. So I do shows on that channel as well. So editor all got added. Let's see if we can get this running now that it tried to crash on us. And before you saw...
Aren't you waiting for the hot reload though?
Yeah, I saw a couple of tools in that toolbar, but now let me close all of these. I have a habit of just hitting Control F5 a lot, and that might be part of my problem. You can see all of the tools that got added. There's quite a few. This is why we don't just give you all of them by default. But we've got like undo, redo up here. So you can undo. We've got all the bold italic stuff, paragraphs. This is like headings and paragraphs, fonts. Font sizes. I don't know if some of this applies to, probably most of it doesn't apply to Markdown. So
no, it doesn't.
we
Well,
might
if
not
the NuGet package is smart enough, it will probably actually keep the HTML in there. It'll probably have like a span with a certain style attribute. But I haven't actually tried it. I don't remember.
Let's do it live. Let's try. So no, fonts aren't persisted in Markdown. There may be a setting in the Markdown tool that we're using that does do that. So you might be right. What it would do is what Marin's saying is it'd be span And then there would be some like font, like style that's been applied to make it do that. I know that the Markdown, it's MarkDig that we're using for this. MarkDig has a bunch of settings that we could probably spend all day on in this stream as well. So we won't get down that rabbit hole, but there may be a way to support that too. Like another one that would be interesting. Oh, look, it does tables though, Marin.
Cool.
It's smart enough to do tables, so that's
Oh,
really
and
helpful.
tables are so hard to write in Markdown.
I always have trouble with that too. That's exactly what I was using this for the other day. So I started writing an article and I was like, I want a table really easy. And I went in here and I added the tools and did the table and pasted it into my document. So that's dog fooding at its best. We've got the view HTML, so you can view it in a pop-up. We could also bind that HTML live down at the bottom. So that's really easy to do. So all we have to do to bind that is just say, give me the HTML state, and we can pop that into the bottom window. So I'm just taking the HTML state that the editor is using to power the what you see is what you get view, and just putting it in this bottom panel. So now we have like data binding across 3 things. And then I'm going to butcher everywhere, but you get the point. I don't need to spell correctly for you to get the point. We've got this in Markdown and HTML, and I'm sure somebody with OCD is going nuts right now over this being misspelled. I'm going to leave it like that just to drive them crazy. What's great here, though, is we can edit the Markdown, and it updates both as well. So this is just the power of Blazor. Like Blazor is amazing. Let's add some more stuff here. So we don't want to continue to like just type in fresh Markdown all the time. We'll go ahead and initialize it. So when the page loads, it has something in there. And then let's get some data and put it in there. So I'm going to go to my toolbox again. This is all just pre-written code. This isn't like web forms or anything. It's just trying to save some time here on coding. Oops, put that in the wrong place. So we never built the file file explorer yet. So I'm going to drop a Telerik tree list. So we've got a Telerik tree list, and I'm going to bind to some data which I haven't defined yet. I'm going to give it an ID field and a parent ID field, and this ID field and parent ID field, this lets me bind hierarchy a hierarchy of data to the data source. So when I'm clicking on those tree items, they drill down. And then we also define the items field that is going to be on this data set. So there will be a property called tree, which is the tree list of items that I'm binding to. There's a field called has children. This indicates if that list of items has children, so we can toggle whether it can be expanded or not. And then just like our Telerik data grid, we list out the individual properties that we want to bind to a column. So I've got the file path, the file size, and a URL. And the URL is going to do a custom action for us. So I'm going to title that column as action, and I'm going to put a button in there using a button template. So the button template is going to take, and what's nice about these components in Blazor, and our components are written natively. So we start with the Blazor framework, and we embrace that as far as it will take us. And if we run into anything the framework can't do, we might patch in a little bit of JavaScript to help us along the way. But what that gives us is these native templates that we can use. In almost all of the components have some sort of templating feature. And this one, in this column, I'm calling up a template, and this is a Razor template. You can see the little Razor syntax opening up the code here. is when the component iterates through each item, it's going to give me the full item. This is really, really nice. I have access to the entire object that I've bound. My object is a tree node, so I'm going to cast, it's generic, so it's just an object it's getting. I'm going to tell the template that this is a tree node object. And then we're going to look at it. If it's a blob, which is, I'm getting data from Git, so or GitHub. So it's going to be, if it's a file, like a markdown file, GitHub will have that marked as a blob, and we will bind that to a button click. And we'll make some API calls to go take that blob and throw it into a text field for us. So let's see here. We need to put some code in here. We'll go ahead and drop in our initialization code. So I've got a dependency injected here called GitHub, which we can look at in a moment. And if I'll publish this, if I haven't already, I'll publish this so you guys can download it. Just keep in mind, this isn't an official Telerik resource yet. This is just something I wrote for a cool demo. So, Marin, if you get any support tickets, I will help you. I promise. We call, whoops, I'm dragging and dropping. I don't want to do that. We call Git project root nodes, and I'm going to pass in my account and a project that I want this to dive into. You could take this code and modify it to like build out like all a bunch of projects and things like that at a top level if you wanted. I hard coded my personal repository in there. That's going to bind to, which this didn't get pasted in yet. It's going to bind to a list of documents. Drop the rest of the code in here. So I've got a list of something called a tree node. It's a very simple class that I got this from the GitHub API. I can show you how to do that here. We've got plenty of time for that. I'll show you how I got this tree node class in just a moment. But it has a tree node which has the path. It's initializing root for the very first one. It has the size of the file, the SHA, the parent, the tree, which is if it has any children, they will bind here as additional tree nodes. The type, and this is that thing that I'm checking to see if it's a blob or it's a tree. And this is all coming from the GitHub API. If the type is a tree, I'm going to say it has children. And then we'll bind the URL, which is the way to get the resource that is defined by this tree node. And then if we want to grab a file from GitHub, we're going to pass this URL to GitHub, and then it will give us a file response back. There'll be some other metadata in here I'm throwing away. The thing we really want is content. That's going to be the actual like markdown from the file. So if we go back to our index page and see what we're doing here, when we click expand on the tree node, we're going to get that tree node argument in. I'm going to take the full item from that was data bound from that item, and if I believe what we're doing here is making sure, I lost my train of thought on this one. So if it has children and it also does not have the same, the parent and child are not the same item, then we're going to go ahead and get the nodes for it. I can't remember what the second part does, to be honest. I grabbed this, I think, out of another demo and put it in here. So basically we're making sure it has children to expand it, and then we're making sure that it's not an already selected item, I believe. Prevents a recursive fetch. There you go, Mr. Magoo. Thank you very much. That's what we're doing. And then we're going to go ahead and get the nodes for that tree. So we get the root node, then every time we click on the expand button, we're going to get that node, and then we'll go ahead and just append it to the data that we already have. And then when we click it, we'll go ahead and fetch the GitHub URL and the content, and it'll give us a file back, and we'll take that file and put it in our markdown state because it's a markdown file, which will set off our data binding again. So I know that was a little long-winded, but if we go back here and take a look, this is actually pretty cool. So it comes up, it says new file, but now we have a Telerik tree list. Is it tree list or tree view? Doing it again, Marin.
You hit it right this time. It's a tree list.
Tree list, yes. Tree list. Tree view's the one that's not grid-like. Okay. Tree list.
Yeah, the tree list is the one with columns. That's how I remember them.
And I have just one markdown file in this repo, so maybe this wasn't the best example, but you can see we can load more nodes. If I had other markdown files, they would be listed in these nodes. But the one that does
maybe we can try the Blazing Coffee app.
Yeah, Blazing Coffee has more. We can
try some of the documentation.
And when we click edit, look at the file, it just pops up in there. And we've got it on both sides. So we could edit this code. What I like is the image shows and everything right there in that Telerik editor. So we could come in, and if I wanted to delete like a section of this won't live edit. I would have to write some GitHub API code to push the data back up to GitHub. That would be way more complex than I have time to demo. So I didn't put any write operations in there, but you can see that we can edit the document right there. So I thought that was pretty cool. Some of the neat stuff here that is kind of like the behind the scenes bits that you didn't see in the webinar. When I was building this out, I wanted to get some live data from somewhere just to show that it wasn't like static, predefined data just sitting on my drive or something, or sitting in memory. So if we look at some of this GitHub API stuff, this was kind of fun. It didn't take long. I went out to the Google API. The Google API is pretty easy to understand. I can grab this string out of here, and this is not like the best practice for writing a service like this, but the API looks like this. So we'll zoom in for a second. It's api.google.com repos. Then you pass in the user, the project, and then it's get trees master to get the data from that. So if I come in here, let's try Telerik. It's Telerik, and then Blazing Coffee, I think was the other one. There we go. This is the response you get back, right? So here's that tree that we're binding to the tree view, tree list. Doing it again. We bound this to our tree control in that view, so you can see we get an array of trees, and they are of type blob, or they are of type tree. Okay. So if they're type tree, then this URL is going to point me to another tree. If they are of type blob, then this is some binary file of some sort. So this one, in this case, is a solution file. So this is where that data came for that demo. What's really neat, though, is if you take this JSON code here, I'm going to hit copy. If I need to build something like this tree node to serialize that JSON data into something in C# land, what you can do is come up in here and say edit paste special. I'm in Visual Studio, so edit paste special, paste JSON as class, and then you can see Visual Studio's translated that JSON content that I had highlighted into the objects that are coming across the wire as JSON. So it's kind of doing like a serialization here into what those classes would look like. And then you can modify them a little bit. As long as the name of the property matches uh, the the JSON object field, then it's going to data bind. So as long as I don't, you can change capitalization, but as long as you don't change the terminology here, you can annotate these if you really wanted to change those really bad. But you can see up here where some of that stuff came from. So tree node is this list of trees. The SHAs, I mean, they map one-to-one to the data that's in here. So I just copied and pasted that, modified it a little bit, added things like this nice has children getter only property to make that has children field light up for me in the so this has children field is what allows this arrow button to either show or not. If it was false, there, just like the readme button has no way to expand or contract that because there's no children underneath. So to make that light up in the UI, all we do is check the node and see what type it is. So I mean, this is really, really easy stuff to set up a view model from. That's exactly what I did here. Is I took this data, created a view model, and just bound it to the Telerik component, and that made it really simple. That's how I was able to get this stuff done. Like this took it took just a few minutes to get the initial two components talking to each other. Then the GitHub part of it took me maybe an hour. I don't know. Just to kind of like format the data the way I wanted it and do a couple calls. And then the Google API is well written, so the URLs that you see inside of each of these, like if it's a blob, we'll take readme.markdown again. You can just take this URL. This makes writing your API really easy because you just pass this URL to the next API, the next await call, and it gives you back some more JSON data. And then you can see the content field here. This is the binary representation of the markdown file, so, and you can see it's encoded in base 64. So I just captured that in another one of those serialized little files. You can emit, there's other properties in there you can see, encoding, the node ID, all that. I didn't need all that. I just needed the content. So you can omit anything that you don't want to serialize over. I just took the content, and then there's a little bit of code up here that takes it from the binary format, turns it into a string, and gets the markdown out of it. So that's the stuff that you didn't see on the webinar that I thought was kind of cool. Just a little bit of API work behind the scenes there to make it light up with a little bit of real data.
There is probably another way to go about this, by the way. I think that GitHub have their own like NuGet package to facilitate all of that, including connection to repositories, even authentication, and also getting files, getting repository lists, and so on and so forth. And I haven't tried it at one point. I think it was in early 2019 when Blazor was still very young. And back then it had a problem with sending the HTTP requests from Blazor. I think it's called DocToKit, the one at the top. So that one, it looked very promising. It was going to get you all the classes that you need. It was going to provide you the service calls. All you had to do was provide like usernames and authentication. So that was pretty cool, but it didn't work in Blazor last time I tried it, which was a year and a half ago. So maybe that's something that we could try on another stream, or someone could just try. I don't know. Because right now it says Net Standard 2.0, which is good. I don't think it said that earlier.
Yeah, I was gonna say it might have been just .NET Framework before. That's why it didn't work at one point. But yeah, I wish I would have known this was out there. But the API, I mean, this would be a lot more robust because I could do, like you said, authentication. You could write your files back. All that would be really cool. What's nice to point out here is the fact that even though there's possibly an easier way to do it, like you mentioned, where did my API go again? The amount of code that I had to write to do some read operations off of that were pretty minimal.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So you do get from JSON async, and then it just binds to whatever those objects are. But then, if you have a predefined API like a NuGet package, you don't have to go through the work of creating your, your serialization types. And there was a little bit of discovery that I had to need to make sure I was, I was getting the right API calls back and stuff. So yeah, that would be cool to explore a little bit more. There's a lot of API surface on NuGet as well, or not NuGet, sorry, GitHub. I mean, that thing has a massive API. There's no way you'd want to duplicate, like, even though they're only like 2-line statements, you wouldn't want to go through like the whole API and try to implement it.
Especially if you want to start writing there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you wanted to make a serious project against it, that would be really cool. This shows like how you can take their API and mold it to UI components really easily. And since you have a pre-written NuGet package that has the API and a NuGet package that has components like these, I mean, you can build file explorers that go through your GitHub repos. You can build editors to edit Markdown in your repos. You could build dashboards for your GitHub.
You could probably even build some sort of custom download sample, like the Blazor UI repo could probably let you download a certain folder only with tools like the document processing zip library.
Yeah, that's one thing I wanted to add. I don't know if we have time, but we can try. We can try, Marin. I don't know if it'll be that. It's one of those things where you think it's not going to take that much time, but you might be going down a rabbit hole. But one thing I wanted to do with this is I wanted to be able to
think the
save.
toughest part. Yeah, sure. I think the toughest part is going to be like making all the async HTTP requests to get the files initially into memory. So that's something that one would have to play around with, because when you have, say, 50, 60, 100 files, you're otherwise going to throttle the browser and it's not going to be pretty. So it's actually going to take some work to get right.
So I think what we'll do, I'll pull up another project here to just do some simpler demos in a minute. One thing I wanted to do with this is we have HTML coming out of the editor. I think it'd be really simple to throw this HTML into our document processing library and then allow you to like download either a Word doc, or I think I might have lost Marin, by the way. Looks like either his camera went or his stream. There you are. You're back. I was saying, if you didn't hear me, we have the Telerik editor outputs HTML. So we could take the HTML and feed it to the document processing library and get out PDFs and Word docs. Now, I know Blazor is fast enough to do a lot of UI stuff, but it's still running in interpreted mode. So I'm not sure if running the document processing library on the client would be very performant.
I think it will. Well, it's not the best because WebAssembly, as you said, is still interpreted. But I think for our purposes, it's going to work out fine, because what we're going to like, what, a couple of 100 kilobytes tops. So it's going to be fine. And by the way, we have a sample of that in the Blazor UI repo.
We do. Okay. Let's see. In this one?
Yep.
So
just one folder up.
Up a folder. And
in the editor.
Editor.
Import and export.
Import, export. So in here we have, whoops, I mean to bring that up. There's a little plugin I've got popping up on the side. So is it an index?
Yep. It's basically an editor and a couple of buttons. And essentially the code is basically kind of a service-like. It's a class. See that injected service. I call it file converter. And that thing basically uses the HTML that we get from the editor, and it kind of does things to it with the document processing.
Let's see, we've got 15 minutes. Let's see how far we can get. Think we can do this?
Sure.
All right, so first thing we need is the file converter, probably. Let's go ahead and navigate to that. So we're in the GitHub repo for Telerik examples, and I'll paste that into chat. In case we don't finish this, you'll see where we're getting this from. And then we'll go drop down a little bit back to this import-export, make sure we're in the right folder here. The service
Probably in data,
is
I
under
think.
Data.
Because
There
it
we
was
go.
the default folder.
File converter, and we need to copy this. We're probably going to bring in a bunch of NuGet packages too.
Yep.
So we'll go ahead and add this to our project, Solution Explorer. Let's go ahead and add a data folder, just so if there's like a namespace.
Sure, you can do it in the services, doesn't matter.
Do I have a service folder? I do, I guess,
Yep.
because I built the API in there. Okay. Add new item. And we'll just say class. Go ahead and hit add. And then we'll paste in this. I pasted in the whole file. There we go. And then we have a lot of things that we need to add. So let's go pop open our NuGet package explorer. And I'll move this over so I can just see what's in here. We need the, let's see, probably easier just to paste this in. So we need,
now the thing is that for Blazor, especially, and for things that are .NET standard, you don't need the packages that have Windows in the namespace. That namespace, the Windows namespace, is just for backwards compatibility for everyone. But the packages that have Windows in their name are for the old .NET, like 4, 4.5. And for .NET Standard, we want the packages that don't have Windows in the name. So I suggest that we just go to the project file in the GitHub repo and just copy the references from there. I think it's going to be much faster.
Yeah, that would be much shorter. Good suggestion. So we'll go to the
CSproj file.
CSproj under, let's see,
in the middle.
This one here. Yeah, that's so much easier. Just grab all of these. We don't want the Blazor UI one because that's a little bit older than what we have. We may need to throw an update on these too.
Yep.
Let's go to Solution and open, double click here. There we go. Yeah, that's a lot faster than trying to search for them all. Good suggestion. And then we'll go ahead and do a restore here. So Solution, dependencies, or just do a build.
It's probably going to blow up because the Telerik Blazor package depends on, I think it was the spreadsheet streaming. Yes, it's the spreadsheet streaming and the zip library, because we use them for the Excel export of the grid. And now the versions don't match, so we need to update the document processing packages before we can actually build that.
Let's see if it'll list them out here for us to update. There we go. We'll just hit update all. I don't know if I want to update the, I guess that shouldn't hurt anything. We're going to just update this whole thing. Okay, these are probably normal errors that are just from the copy paste. So we'll go back into.
Yeah, in the copy paste, we kind of butchered the namespace, so we have to tweak that.
This one, which version
this
of
one
Blazor
is
this for?
No, this won't work. We have to remove that. So this one is the hosting is because the original package is a server-side project, so we get the file system.
Okay. Yeah, we won't be able to use the file system at all here.
Yeah, but we don't need to.
Yeah, we already have. So this is getting like path information and stuff.
Yep. So we can skip some of the stuff, like the reading of a file and getting an HTML from a file. We don't need that because we only want to export right now.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the ones that use actual files.
Yeah, so the example we're taking from is a server-side example. So we have access to the server resources. So the disk that's on the server, paths on the server, things like that. So we don't need
We need a constructor because we need some JS interrupt. We need to send a file to the user, so we need JavaScript for that.
Yeah, we don't need to inject this. We just need the JS interrupt. So the JavaScript bits here, which I'm accidentally butchering, the JavaScript bits will do the file saving. That is something that is not built into Blazor yet. So there's no way to save a file other than to call out to the DOM, or not the DOM, the browser, and have it do that work for us.
Yeah.
Get
You also
HTML
remove that
string.
one.
Yeah, we don't need that because we already have an HTML string. All right.
And now we need to fix the namespace.
Yes, so we've got import editor.data. This is actually going to be webinar.client. I thought it was services. Let's see here.
It's services.
Double check. I thought it was. Why is it not lighting up? Oh, just client. I didn't namespace those. Just to leave another import statement out of a demo. So it was just to simplify things for the demo purpose. This is compiling, it looks like.
So we now need another class. It's called a file downloader that generates the base64 representation we need for downloading, and we need the JavaScript file to actually do the saving. So again, in data,
it was under data.
we got
again.
the file downloader.
And this is the JS interrupt bits. So this is the C# code that will interrupt with the JavaScript side of the application. Let's be really lazy and just shove it in here. No, let's not do that because that's going to make it a pain in the butt. I'm trying to do this fast. I know we're running short on time. We've got just a few more minutes. We got to give away prizes and stuff too. Let's pop another class in here. We can rename that in a minute. File downloader. So what I like to do is, it doesn't really care. You don't really care what files you name at the beginning. Just hit Control period on the class name. Let Visual Studio rename the file for you. Saves me a lot of headaches. So file converter was like class.cs, and now it's file converter. So those are properly named. So we have the file downloader. Do we need JavaScript for this, or is it just calling directly?
Yes, we need a bit of JavaScript. So we first need to fix the namespace.
Yes, this one is going to be webinar.client.
Yep. And then we have to return the call to that class in the export method. Back in the file converter CS file, we gotta find a little bit further down, and more down. Yep, there it is on the line. Yep, it's right here, line 70, 980. Yep, this one. We want that in, and now we gotta get a JavaScript file from the sample app again. It's the actual code that will save the file for the browser.
Yeah, so this is C# code that's going to call out to the browser and then initialize some JavaScript to save the file.
It's in the web
go
root.
Over to web root under JS, we have file downloader.js. We'll copy this file. This one is some browser trickery at best, and this is the way you do it. I mean, that's just the way the web works. So you pass in the data stream, the file data, and then what you're going to do with the file data is you create a link, you click the link, which initializes a download, and then you remove the link from the document. It's so weird, but that's the way everybody does it. That's the only way to get it done. In the web. That's web development for you folks. Let's see, we need to add a new item. We need to add some JavaScript in here, and just add, it doesn't really matter. Give me just a file. I don't care at this point. Just there. We'll rename it. I need to add my little, just leave me alone. Visual Studio is trying to help too much. Sometimes you just need to add like a file. There's a plugin that does it, and I always forget to put it in when I reset my Visual Studio instance. I think it was called FileSaver.js, right?
I don't remember, but it doesn't matter anyway. We just have to reference it. Doesn't matter.
Oh, file download.
It's not namespaced or anything.
So we need to add that here. So in our document, we'll add FileSaver.js, and now our application can call that and save the file to the client.
Yep. Now we just need the service and to call the service. We just need to register that file converter as a service and to call up that service from our UI.
So we'll do @inject, and it is, what's the name of it again?
File converter, I think.
And then we need a button. We need a button to click. So we'll
Yes.
put, is there anything special about it? Is it there an example
I think not.
in here? Let's see, pages, index. You put it in the custom tools, it looks like. We can do that real fast. So we'll put, this is a custom toolbar item that we're putting in the editor. So I need to open up this tag.
Yeah, it takes some setup, so yep. I propose we just slam a regular button in there because we don't have time.
Okay. So
Just take the Telerik button there, export that says export to PDF, and
so in place of the editor tool?
yeah, yes, just leave the Telerik button right next to the editor so we can run it because we don't have much time to get the custom tools running. It takes like 5-10 minutes setup.
Okay, so you want me to take, here, let's take this out. Take the editor out. Here, let me go. Yeah, there we go. Telerik editor, that's, my keyboard. Keep hitting the wrong button. So we'll put a button here for now.
Any button will do.
Yep, any button will do. IntelliSense was going nuts on the Telerik button for some reason. And then we need to do something here.
Yeah, method, yeah.
So we'll go create that method and then we'll bind it to that button. And I think Eva's almost ready here to call out some winners for prizes, and we're going to bring in some new guests here. Let's see, the code for this. We're so close. So close here. Task export to PDF, is that it?
Yep, it's just on a wait on line 57. That's what you need.
So if we take this and shove it here, and then we bind that to our button, we should be good, right? I think.
Yeah, just remove some of the code in the method because there is some error handling in the sample, like line 78 to line 81.
Line 78, line 81, we don't need these.
Yep, and the file converter is, we fixed the variable names, file converter casing and the editor content. That's our, I think, HTML state.
This one, yeah, this is going to be, you're right, HTML state. And you can see why we have this guy doing support for us. You're hitting these
just add
things
PDF
off to
here.
me so fast. What is this?
Just PDF. Remove the brackets.
Oh, because your example does everything, right? Like every type.
But here we'll just do a PDF. And we need to register that service now in the program CS file.
Oh, yeah. You're thinking 2 steps ahead of me. I love it.
Well, I wrote the example after all.
And it was
file converter.
So we've got our service injected, we've got our page built, we've got our button wired up. Let's see if this does a trick. We're loading. Let's bring in some real data so it looks like something. And then where did our button end up?
It's right under the editor. So we gotta scroll down, I guess. Oh wait, the editor is 100% high.
I didn't put text.
We have to move the button. No, we need the button to move up. Put the button in the header maybe.
It needs some text too.
Yeah, but it has
It
to
had
go in
no
the header.
button
We
title.
can't see it for the editor. Yeah, that's cool. I think we'll see
There
it
we
now.
go. Let's cross our fingers. We don't have any more time if it doesn't work. Bring in a file, read me, and then click me, and big fail.
Let's try with something simpler. Maybe there is something off in the content. Maybe the image is throwing it off because images are weird.
We're 1 minute over, so we better bring Eva in before she starts. Oop, did she bring herself? I just took you out. Hi, Eva. Who broke stuff?
Wait, I don't know why you're muted. I'm here. I'm sorry. I was pushing you and nagging you. I'm really sorry.
The hook is coming. She's dragging us off stage. All right.
I'm sorry.
Did we get some prize winners here?
I mean, you're gonna have to choose them now. So I have some
I gotta
numbers
choose
lined
them?
up here. Yeah. I thought I'll just give you, the responsibility of it. So if someone is kind of pissed off that they didn't get a prize, I can say, "Oh, Ed chose a number," because I promised I'll be the good cop, right? Remember?
Of course.
Sorry.
So
But
where am I choosing?
So I've
these
narrowed
from?
it down between the numbers 1 and 10. So I've randomly drawn 10 people, and now you have to choose one.
So between 1 and 10, I'm looking at line 73 here. Let's take 3.
3. Awesome. Let's see. Well, number 3 is actually Sam Yusuf, Ancient Coder. Awesome. Congratulations, Ancient Coder.
So Ancient Coder for the win.
Woohoo! First gift card goes to Ancient Coder. And by the way, Ancient Coder, thanks so much for hanging out. This is super random, but Ancient Coder is on our streams very often, and I think this is very well deserved. Finally getting a prize on our stream, so congrats. Sorry again, I pushed you out, but what's the deal with you two now? Do you know if it's the tree list or the tree view?
No, I still can't tell you which one's which. Let's do this, Marin. Which one has the grid? The tree list or
grid.
the tree view?
No, it's the tree list is the one with columns.
Tree list is the one with columns. So the grid-like one is the tree list.
Yep.
The tree view is the one that's like a file browser like tree.
Yep.
And I think I know what's wrong with our project. I know we don't have time to get into it, but I think it's with our JavaScript interop call. I think it's there's still like a namespace around it somewhere. And I think the conversion is happening, but the download isn't. So we ran short on time, but we got pretty close. You can find all of those examples that we were pulling from to do this on that GitHub repo we shared at github.com/Telerik/Blazor-UI. But we'll share some follow-up notes. I'll get this working and I'll push this up onto my repos as well. And we'll share that with everybody that registered for a prize. That's the only way we can get back with you folks. So if you registered for a prize,
Yes.
We'll send out an email with a link to the code that we wrote and the working version. I think there's just one little tiny tweak that needs to happen and it's ready to go. So we're going to bring in some more folks, Eva.
Definitely. Let's bring those people on. And can you actually bring them on and I'll share the rest of our day here?
Sure. And I just wanted to thank Marin again for joining me. It was very last minute and Marin was like, I'll come on. And it was like super awesome to have you on here helping me live support. Again, Marin's running support behind the scenes for the Blazor product. So it was nice to have you on.
Thank you for having me, Ed. Thank you so
And
much.
by the way,
It was fun.
also, if
It was my
you've
first
seen
time on a
the-
stream and it was super cool.
Oh, that's so lovely. And also, if you've seen the dev cats, Marin is the owner of 2 of the dev cats on our channels. I really was hoping to see one of them on stream, but maybe next time, I guess. Or maybe
Next
2.
time.
Promise. Now you have to come back on stream. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you. So we're going to bring on, are you sticking around, Eva?
I mean, I just wanted to say that we're going on and I don't have to stick around anymore. Don't forget to sign up for the prizes. Don't forget to follow us. And yeah, I'm moving on. More code, please. So, hey, TJ.
So
Oh, I accidentally cut her off. I'm sorry. I was trying to give you guys a floor. I know you want to get at it. We're cutting into your time now. So I'm welcoming TJ Vantel and Carl Bergenheim. Bergenheim?
Birmingham. Yeah,
Birmingham.
the second one. Yeah, you got it.
There's no I in there, eh?
No. There's a hockey player that has that last name though, so it's close enough.
And then, do we have Stefan?
Yes, we do.
Okay. There was no video. Wasn't sure. So
Yeah, unfortunately, my camera is not working, so just a fancy picture and my voice.
well, now the ninja and the Kendoka have a voice, so that's really cool. I never knew
Yeah.
what they sounded like before.
you should have just
signed
came
up
in
for
as
voiceover
the
gigs.
come in as the Kendoka. Just make your name Kendoka.
So, quick fun fact before I take off here, fellas. Carl was the original program manager on Telerik UI for Blazor until it grew into the size that it is now. We had to add another program manager to the mix. So we have Maria as program manager now. But Carl helped kick us off with that product. So that was really nice to have Carl on board to kick us off there. And Carl's in charge of the Kendo UI stuff. And TJ is one of our developer advocates on the Kendo React product. And then, sorry, Stefan, I don't know what part of the team you are, so I can't give you a proper introduction.
Can you guess?
You are one of the engineers behind Kendo.
You're close. I'm the support person, but I'm also engineering some of the components as well. So you hit 50%.
50%. That's about all I'm good for. So I'm gonna give you guys the rest of your time, but I just wanted to give you all I wish good luck and enjoy, everybody.